In any other era, Leon Degrelle might have been hailed as a hero. Handsome, charismatic, and ambitious, he was a decorated soldier and a natural leader. However, fate placed him on the wrong side of history. Degrelle was a Belgian fascist who became infatuated with Nazi Germany. For years he sought the favor of Adolf Hitler and his regime, but the Nazis initially spurned him. Eventually, however, they welcomed him into their ranks, though at a tremendous cost. To gain their acceptance, Degrelle would betray not only his nation, but also his faith, ultimately becoming one of the most infamous collaborators of World War II. Born in 1906 in Bouillon, a small town nestled in Belgium's Ardennes region, Degrelle's upbringing was relatively privileged. His father owned a successful brewery, and his family ensured that he received a strict Jesuit education. He later attended the prestigious Catholic University of Louvain, where he initially studied law. It was here that two driving forces began to shape his life: his unyielding ambition and a fervent search for a cause. At first, it was the Catholic faith that captivated Degrelle. A passionate religious activist, he was determined to champion the Church's message, so he began his career in journalism, writing for the Catholic publication Le Drapeau, and eventually managing the publishing house Christus Rex. Degrelle's enthusiasm for religious reform led him to abandon his law degree, as he devoted himself to building Christus Rex into a broader movement, advocating for both religious and social change. However, Degrelle's ambitions soon led him into the political arena. The economic and social turmoil of the Great Depression provided fertile ground for new, radical ideas. As in much of Europe, Belgium was plagued by poverty, discontent, and instability during the 1930s. Left-wing movements such as communism were gaining ground, while the Belgian government floundered amid weak coalitions and ineffective leadership. Degrelle blamed the nation's problems on a loss of religious faith and moral decay, seeing his country's disjointed national identity as a further threat. Belgium's French-speaking Walloons and Dutch-speaking Flemish people were deeply divided, with some Flemish factions even advocating for a union with the Netherlands. Degrelle saw an opportunity to unite Belgium under strong authoritarian leadership. In response, he transformed his religious movement into a political one, founding the Rexism Party. Rexism sought to establish a Catholic nationalist state that would revitalize Belgium both morally and politically. Degrelle, a gifted orator, quickly gained attention. His call for a new social order resonated with traditional Catholic voters who were disillusioned with the political status quo. In the 1936 general elections, the Rexist Party won significant support, and at just 30 years old, Degrelle had emerged as a rising political star. However, his success was short-lived. As the Rexist Party grew, so too did its critics. Many began to view Degrelle and his followers as dangerous extremists, and the Catholic Church itself turned against him. By the late 1930s, Degrelle had been ostracized by mainstream Belgian politics. His increasingly fascist rhetoric alienated former allies, and his party's influence began to wane. In the 1937 elections, Degrelle suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of the Catholic Prime Minister Paul van Zeeland, who condemned Rexism as a threat to Belgium's democratic institutions. Degrelle's political career seemed over, but then the specter of war with Germany changed everything. With the outbreak of World War II, Degrelle saw a new path to power. By 1940, Belgium had become a pivotal battleground in the Nazi blitzkrieg. The small Belgian army, despite its efforts, was no match for the sheer might of the German war machine. In just 18 days, the country fell under German occupation. For the second time in the span of a quarter century, Belgium had to endure foreign rule. With the Belgian government in disarray and King Leopold III signing the surrender documents, a power vacuum ensued. In the midst of this chaos, many believed Degrelle had perished in captivity in France, where he had been imprisoned by the Vichy government. However, he emerged from his internment with renewed determination. He saw the German occupation as an opportunity to rebuild his political fortunes and to make himself indispensable to the new order. Despite being initially rejected by the Nazis, Degrelle persisted. He tirelessly petitioned German officials, including Pierre Laval, the collaborationist Prime Minister of Vichy France, and even the Belgian King, Leopold III. Degrelle's ambition knew no bounds. He was willing to betray his nation and its people to gain power. Despite his efforts, the Nazis remained skeptical. In particular, Hitler's propaganda chief, Joseph Goebbels, dismissed Degrelle as a fraud, a man who was nothing more than a marginal extremist. However, rather than retreat, Degrelle doubled down. He remodeled his Rexist movement along purely fascist lines, adopting Nazi symbols, rhetoric, and even tactics. Like Hitler's brown shirts SA, Degrelle created his own paramilitary force, the Formations de Combat. These units, dressed in black uniforms adorned with Rexist insignia, became a tool for political intimidation and violence. Degrelle also introduced a Rexist salute and established a youth movement aimed at indoctrinating young Belgians into fascist ideology. Interestingly, the parallels between Degrelle's Rexist party and Hitler's Nazi party were not accidental. Degrelle admired Hitler's ability to cultivate loyalty and control over his people through fear, propaganda, and violence. Degrelle even modeled himself as a Belgian version of the Führer, adopting the title of chef and positioning himself as the leader of a fascist revolution in Belgium. Despite these efforts, Degrelle remained on the fringes of power. The Nazis preferred to work with other Belgian collaborators, especially the Flemish nationalist party VNV, which had stronger roots among the Dutch-speaking population. Degrelle's dream of leading Belgium seemed more distant than ever. By 1941, Degrelle saw a new opportunity to ingratiate himself with Hitler. Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union, began in June 1941, and the Nazis sought volunteers from across Europe to join their fight against communism. Degrelle seized this chance. He volunteered to fight on the Eastern Front and joined the Legion Wallonie, a unit composed of Belgian volunteers willing to fight alongside the Germans. What made Degrelle's decision remarkable was his lack of military experience. He had no background in warfare, yet he willingly handed over control of his political party to his deputy and enlisted as a common foot soldier. Degrelle's primary motivation was ambition. He believed that by proving himself on the battlefield, he could return to Belgium as a war hero and seize political power. Degrelle's actions were also a reflection of his ideological commitment to fascism. Like many European fascists, Degrelle viewed communism as an existential threat. He saw the Soviet Union as the embodiment of everything he despised: atheism, Marxism, and the destruction of traditional values. By fighting on the Eastern Front, Degrelle believed he was defending Western civilization itself. Despite his lack of military experience, Degrelle quickly gained a reputation as a brave and capable soldier. His first taste of combat came during the brutal winter of 1941 to 1942, when he and his fellow Walloons faced the Red Army along the frozen Russian front. The conditions were harsh, with temperatures plummeting below -30 degrees Celsius, and the fighting was relentless. Many of Degrelle's comrades perished, but he survived, proving his resilience. Degrelle's valor did not go unnoticed. In early 1942, during a fierce battle near the Maas River, Degrelle played a key role in holding back a massive Soviet attack. Outnumbered and outgunned, Degrelle and his fellow soldiers managed to block the Russian advance for 10 hours, earning their unit its first battle honors. For his bravery, Degrelle was awarded the Iron Cross, Second Class, a prestigious German military decoration. He was also promoted to the rank of sergeant major. For Degrelle, this recognition was a turning point. No longer just a political leader, he was now a respected military figure. His reputation as a soldier grew, and by May 1942, he had risen to the rank of lieutenant. In the following months, Degrelle became more than just a participant in the war. He became a symbol of collaborationist heroism. The Nazis, eager to promote the contributions of their European allies, began to hold Degrelle up as an example of a foreign volunteer who had fully embraced the German cause. In 1943, Degrelle took his collaboration with the Nazis to the next level. Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS, had long been interested in creating an international army of SS soldiers drawn from racially pure European peoples. Degrelle, eager to advance his own standing, offered to integrate his Walloon Legion into the Waffen-SS, the elite military wing of the Nazi regime. Himmler accepted, and Degrelle's unit became the Sturmbrigade Wallonien, an SS brigade composed of Belgian volunteers. Degrelle's transformation into an SS officer was more than a symbolic gesture. It represented a deepening of his ideological commitment to the Nazi cause. By aligning himself with the SS, Degrelle embraced the full spectrum of Nazi beliefs, including racial purity and the extermination of Jews. Degrelle even went so far as to declare his loyalty to Hitler's vision of a greater Germanic Reich that would dominate Europe. As commander of the Sturmbrigade Wallonien, Degrelle participated in several key battles on the Eastern Front. One of the most notable was the Battle of Korsun-Cherkassy in early 1944, where Degrelle and his men found themselves surrounded by Soviet forces. Outnumbered 6-1, Degrelle's brigade fought valiantly to hold the line, while the German army executed a strategic retreat. Despite suffering heavy casualties, the Walloons managed to prevent a total Soviet breakthrough, allowing thousands of German troops to escape. For his actions at Korsun, Degrelle was awarded the Knight's Cross, one of the highest military honors in Nazi Germany. Even more significantly, he was personally decorated by Hitler himself. In a widely publicized ceremony in Berlin, Hitler praised Degrelle as a true soldier and a model collaborator. For Degrelle, this was the pinnacle of his career, the validation he had long sought from the Führer. After receiving the Knight's Cross, Degrelle became a key figure in Nazi propaganda. The Germans used his story to inspire other European fascists, portraying him as a courageous leader who had sacrificed everything for the Nazi cause. Degrelle toured Germany and occupied Europe, giving speeches and meeting with other collaborators. His charismatic presence and military exploits made him a poster child for the Nazi vision of a unified fascist Europe. However, despite his personal success, the war was turning against the Nazis. The tide had shifted, and by mid-1944, the Allies had launched their invasion of France, liberating Paris and advancing toward Belgium. Degrelle, now a major figure in the collaborationist government, found himself on the defensive. Resistance groups in Belgium, emboldened by the advancing Allied forces, began targeting Rexist officials and collaborators. Degrelle's own brother was assassinated by the Belgian resistance, and violence escalated throughout the country. As the Allies advanced, it became clear that Degrelle's dreams of a fascist Belgium were crumbling. By September 1944, Brussels had been liberated, and Degrelle, like many high-ranking collaborators, was forced to flee. He made his way to Germany, where he continued to command his Walloon Brigade in a series of increasingly desperate battles against the Soviets. However, the situation on the Eastern Front was hopeless, and by early 1945, Degrelle's once proud unit had been reduced to a fraction of its original size. In the final days of the war, as Nazi Germany collapsed, Degrelle fled to Spain. He crash-landed a stolen German plane in Franco's Spain, suffering serious injuries in the process. Yet, true to form, Degrelle survived. Franco's fascist regime granted him asylum, and he lived the rest of his life in relative comfort, despite being sentenced to death in absentia by Belgian courts. Leon Degrelle remained a deeply controversial figure until his death in 1994. Unlike many former collaborators who sought to distance themselves from their wartime actions, Degrelle remained unapologetic. He continued to extol the virtues of fascism, frequently appearing in the media to defend his role as a Nazi collaborator. Perhaps most shockingly, Degrelle became a prominent Holocaust denier, publishing articles and letters that claimed the extermination of 6 million Jews was a fabrication. Despite his efforts to rewrite history, Degrelle's legacy is one of betrayal. He betrayed his country, his faith, and ultimately his own people in pursuit of personal power. While some in Belgium, particularly among far-right circles, still view him as a patriot, the overwhelming consensus is that Degrelle's collaboration with the Nazis was a stain on Belgian history. His actions during World War II, particularly his willingness to sacrifice Belgium's independence for the sake of Nazi ideology, have become a permanent part of the nation's history. Degrelle's post-war life in Spain is a testament to the strange fortunes of history. Despite his war crimes and collaborationist past, he lived in relative peace under Franco's protection, even as his former comrades faced trial and execution. Degrelle often boasted of his relationship with Hitler, claiming that the Führer once told him, "If I had a son, I would want him to be like you." Whether this statement was true or another one of Degrelle's fabrications, it nonetheless became a defining part of his self-constructed myth. In Belgium, particularly in his hometown, the reality is that this once revered patriot is now seen as a reckless adventurer. He was willing to risk everything, including the lives of those close to him and the future of his homeland, to pursue his own ambitions.